Hi, welcome to the Retail Media Podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Anurodh Tak, who has been more than a colleague to me and an inspiration to work with during my stint at Swiggy. He's leading Swiggy's ads monetization program for the last 5 years, played a very significant role in shaping Swiggy's retail media strategy, managing ad formats, evolving ad density, and ensuring a great customer experience. Anurodh, trust me, it's a privilege to have you here. And I must thank you for taking our time to chat with us today.
Thank you, Anuj. Thanks a lot for your kind words. I don't think I deserve them all. Like you said, you have been more than a colleague to me, and I've learned a lot from you as well. Let's see what we come out with today's discussion. Let's start the discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. But before we get into some serious stuff, Anurodh, tell us what's the last thing you ordered on Swiggy?
Okay. I think I ordered late night ice creams a few days back from Quality Wars.
Wow. Okay. That must be keeping you cooler for the rest of the day, and I'm sure for months to come. So good stuff.
Yeah, it helps in Rajasthan's heat as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So Anuradh, just to get this entire podcast started, you have been leading Swiggy's ads monetization program for the longest time, and I know the way Swiggy has evolved their program as well. How did this journey in retail media begin a few years back for you?
Sure. So when I joined Swiggy, I joined into a commercial role. I was handling the west part of India, where I was handling the whole P&L, which includes sales, operations, marketing, everything. But I was a little curious to know about how the customer experience is managed and how the revenue generation happens for a platform like Swiggy. Right? And ads was one area which sort of seemed a little more challenging, intricate, involved a lot of components. So I showed interest and then I made this switch in the beginning of 2021. Since then, I've been in the same role, and the journey has really been full of ups and downs like a roller coaster. And the initial thought that brought in, which was around how to manage customer experience, how to still generate revenue, is something that I learned over the last 3-4 years. The challenge of building a sustainable and valuable advertising ecosystem from from a stage where it was just beginning and things were just settling up was very interesting for me to sort of take up at that point in time. Um, to understand how the advertising ecosystem integrates with not just the expectations of the retailers or the advertisers as well as the customers is something that sort of fascinated me, and that's how I sort of stepped into this. We have seen a huge or sort of a long journey since then where we sort of started with one kind of ad format and then evolved into multiple ad formats, expanded the inventory over time. The supply expansion happened. We went into sophistication by introducing a lot of targeting features and a lot in that domain, which sort of was absolutely new and interesting for me at that point in time.
Very interesting. I know, having spent a lot of time at Swiggy myself, I know how competitive and how tough a restaurant industry is to be penetrated, specifically from an ad standpoint. But having said so, what were some of the early challenges you faced while setting up and scaling this ads program at Swiggy?
Sure. So I think if you think about it, there were around 4 to 5 challenges that we sort of had to first understand, comprehend, and then overcome. One was building the infrastructure for the platform. We started almost on a state where it was just a sponsored listing, and then we started introducing a few components of the ad stack. We evolved from just being a sponsored only thing to being a multiple ad format journey. Second was educating the ecosystem. So when I joined, I remember talking to the restaurants, and when I spoke to them about the same thing, what is the definition of ROI or ROAS for you? And I remember there were n number of definitions if I talk to a number of partners, right? Educating the ecosystem on how to understand what ads means and how it will drive your business up is something that was the second challenge that we have to sort of slowly overcome by educating the ecosystem. Third was defining the right ad formats and placing them in the right positions in the food journey of a customer, which was critical, essential, because if you don't place at the top or in the right positions in the journey, it will not have the required visibility. If you place everything at the top, it may lead to a lot of, it may lead to some kind of resistance from the customer. They may not understand it if your relevance is not very strong. So having the right formats and then placing them in the right position was the third challenge that we have to understand and solve. The fourth one was how to measure whether an ads format is successful or not. So again, very heavily dependent on data, understanding and looking at what metrics one should understand, what should look for a new restaurant. Should we look at customers or ROI? For a established restaurant, should we look at the customer mix or ROI? Things like this. And how do you actually do the attribution? Should it be on the same session? Should it be on a for a longer period, etc.? All of these decisions were a part of the initial challenge. The last one was the most critical one, which is how do you balance monetization with the customer experience? If I ignore one, the other will automatically fail sooner or later. And that is the fifth challenge that we sort of had to overcome to be at the stage where we are today.
Got it. Got it. No, I completely resonate. In my current role, I do manage a bunch of retailers in multiple phases of their ads monetization journey. And some of these challenges are truly called out loud and clear. And some of the listeners to this podcast, I'm sure, will benefit a lot from this conversation. But you made a very interesting point, Anurodh, about how ad formats evolved over time, also basis what the advertiser needs were, what was Swiggy's needs as well. Can you just walk us through the evolution of ad supply at Swiggy on when you started and to where it is today?
Sure. So if we talk about the stages, I can roughly break them into 4 stages. The first one, let's call it the foundation stage. So it was actually a stage which was before when I had taken up the role, where we had a very basic layout of some ad slots scattered in the whole journey, mostly on the vertical listing or on the vertical scroll of the homepage. And we were selling ads at a fixed price per slot. That is, I think, 2 years down starting the platform, right? And I think you were leading that sales side of things at that point in time. That was the first stage, right? From there, we started realizing that this is not the most optimum stage and we can't actually keep scaling the monetization journey if we continue doing this. It was not even optimum from a customer's point of view, neither from the restaurant point of view, right? The second stage, logically after this, was expansion and diversification. So we started expanding it to various other widgets of the home page, the food page, customer search page, etc., to give more options for restaurants to engage with the customers while giving them chances to be able to attract more relevant customers, right? Because if now there is someone on the cuisine page or the search page, the relevance is sort of already established. Third stage was evolving into a more sophisticated and contextual kind of advertising, because so far we have not introduced any kind of ads relevance or data science algorithm to ensure that there is a restaurant customer mapping that is being used to show the right ad to the right customer at the right time. All the 3 things are super critical to ensure that the customer actually engages and hence the restaurant gets the ROI, right? And the fourth one was innovation. How do I expand into different kind of ad formats? How do I introduce little more expansion or supply expansion and keep maintaining how my customers are engaging with the same kind of restaurants? If my customers stop interacting with it, there is no incremental gains for me after that.
Sure, sure. No, I think absolutely the fact that Swiggy has always raised its bar on customer experience. I truly resonate with what you're saying in terms of ensuring that density and ad format are truly hand in hand, which kind of leads to great advertising monetization, but also ensures that high customer experience is also maintained. But having said so, right, what metrics or signals do you rely on to gauge whether an ad format is working for both advertisers and Swiggy and users as well? And at what point of time do you decide that when to scale this particular ad format across the country? Uh, just walk us through some of these signals.
Okay. So for advertisers, so you mentioned three things, right? Advertisers, Swiggy, and users. So I will keep Swiggy out because if advertisers and users are happy, Swiggy will automatically get what they are expecting, right? Which is revenue. If neither of them, or even if one of them is not happy, then Swiggy won't be able to generate any incremental revenue on top of whatever we are trying to do, right? So for advertisers, the signals or the metrics essentially are the return or the business growth. Right? If I'm investing 1 rupee, is it giving me X rupees a return? And is this X good enough for my own economics to sustain the investments on ads? Right? That is the basic fundamental for any advertiser to look through to understand whether I should invest in ads or not. Obviously, this X keeps on varying depending on what stage the restaurant is in. Is it a new restaurant? Is it a big restaurant? Is it a new outlet of a big chain, etc.? So there are various metrics. There is a possibility that a restaurant is already established but now wants to expand. So his or her expectations will correspondingly change.
Right.
So expectations in the sense that am I looking at short term right now, right here, right now kind of gains, or am I looking at investing in increasing or building awareness for my brand so that I can get the returns eventually, maybe 3 months down the line, 6 months or 1 year, depending on a lot of factors which are sort of specific to the restaurant, right? However, just to give you a list that we keep a track on, right? One is the CTR. Second is the CVR. CTR is the click-through rate. CVR is the conversion, which is once a customer is landed on the menu page, what is the percentage who is getting converted till the order page conversion.
Sure.
ROAS or ROI is obviously the North Star metric. There are some L2 metrics which include cost per acquisition of a customer, which is where a new customer, a new advertiser would be investing on acquiring more customers, and hence this metric becomes important for that, for a long-term growth gains. Reach and frequency. There are a lot of brands who are aware in that local geography. They may want to expand or they may want to increase their geographical presence. So their reach becomes critical. There are also some brand awareness, increase scores kind of things, which is not very prevalent in terms of practical scenarios. However, a lot of brands that I've spoken to, they themselves have come some kind of sense in saying that now my brand is, or the customers are more aware about my brand, and that is good enough for me. So some of the advertisers also look at this metric, and they are, I don't know if they have a metric to actually measure, but this is what comes on the advertiser side. Second, on the user side, understanding a user is very critical. User opens Swiggy app only because he has to place an order. I don't want to become a deterrent in his journey from opening the app to placing the order. If I'm using a lot of distractions, there is a possibility that he might not even reach the ordering stage and he might drop off. Right? So engagement only till the extent that it doesn't impact my conversions is the first thing. Right? The second thing is feedback. We can do both kind of feedbacks. One with data signals. Second, we can actually engage in some customer immersions that we keep doing after every new kind of ad format release, and we get the feedback directly. Were you able to observe this? Did you find it relevant, not relevant, etc.? There are some relevance scores which are data science signal, or data science team actually creates the signals. If my relevance scores are increasing over time, then I treat it as a success metric, saying that okay, my experimentation was successful.
Sure.
Right? So this is on the user side. And like I said, if users and advertisers are both getting what they want, Swiggy will automatically get the thing.
Got it. No, that's a very, very good insight for not just me, but for all the listeners and viewers of this podcast. But you made a few interesting points, Anurodh, that brands / advertisers have had evolving business goals, some on performance, some on awareness, and to go deeper into this, a lot of brands that we see have very clear business goals in terms of winning that particular category and to an extent of winning that particular keyword on a particular retailer, which is essentially the evolving trend on retail media. But having said so, uh, all of this requires a lot of new art formats. We are in the horizontal marketplaces. We are finding shoppable video ads. We're seeing cube ads in a bunch of places. We are seeing story ads. A bunch of retailers in India using it. Brand of retail, etc., are evolving ad formats. But at Swiggy, I personally, as a consumer and as an employee, I've seen evolving ad formats. Just want to ask you, Anurodh, that how do you decide when to introduce a new ad format, and what's the process behind experimentation and rollout? Are there any ABs done? Are there uh, any restaurants that are early adopters of that? Would be great to have some insight on it.
Okay. First of all, this is a very, very smart and intelligent question. Most of the retail media advertisers don't think of this. And hence, it is very, very crucial to understand when to introduce a new iPhone. People generally work from getting the work done kind of a pace. So they think that now I have listing, now let me just introduce search. Now I have search, now let me introduce some kind of carousel banners or CPU banners. Now I have that as well, now let me introduce videos. But when to introduce a new ad format is of utmost importance. At any point in time, Swiggy or any retail media platform will only earn money when you have a balance between the demand and supply. If you keep increasing supply and you don't have the subsequent demand, there is no point, right? The reverse is also true. So you need to have that equilibrium at all points in time. There may be a 10-20% up and down both sides, but that is okay. But just increasing supply for the sake of it may not help. So just to walk you through how we think or how we decide when to introduce a new ad format. Right? First thing is there a unmet need of the advertiser? The best kind of information comes from the advertisers themselves. You go and talk to a few restaurants who are a little engaged into the retail media advertising space, they will keep giving you ideas. Understand whether that's a valid idea. Try it, test it out, ask a few others. You will know whether the market need exists. However, there will be some examples where restaurants want it, the customers don't want it. Okay?
Right.
This gets validated when you run it and then you realize that you're not getting the engagement metrics against the rest customer needs. And then you sort of take a back step. We have actually done that and we have experienced that as well. And if you want, we can go to
I mean, you're there. Can you tell us any example where you created an ad inventory and potentially went really well with the advertisers, but you had to withdraw it purely from keeping the customer experience high?
not withdraw it, so to say, but the trajectory that we had initially planned based on the advertiser feedback and the potential that we had calculated based on the impression that we are able to generate on a daily basis, we had expected it to grow to 4x of what it is today. The example is the banners on top of the food page. Essentially because restaurants want assured exclusive visibility. They don't really realize whether the customers are engaging on it, would engage on it or not, till the time they actually experience it for 2 or 3 seconds. Once they do, they start realizing that I am not getting the expected returns. And hence my original idea of pushing you to give me that exclusive visibility may not be as lucrative as I initially thought. So we started it. We were able to go to the 25% mark within a quarter. But beyond that, we have sort of seen a stable straight line.
Got it.
Right? So that is one example where the restaurants wanted it. The customers didn't respond to it with the same enthusiasm. So,
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
So the first thing is understanding whether there is any kind of unmet need, right? Obviously, we do our own validations, data checks and everything before we move on, but that's the first. Second is understanding whether there is some kind of new technology that has come in over the last few since I did that last check, right? So latest example would be GenAI. I was thinking of one possibility with GenAI. Sorry, excuse me. So if we deploy GenAI to create videos using text and expose it to the restaurants on our self-serve portal. Restaurants can just give command in text and the video would be automatically generated, which could be hosted on Swiggy in real time.
Right.
This technological advancement can actually change the whole game of advertising. Any restaurant, based on the real-time need, can define what is it that he wants to show through that video. For example, I'm a biryani player and I wrongly anticipated my demand for today. At 8 p.m., I realized that I have surplus amount of uh, biryani left over. I can give some discount, but how do I highlight it? I can run a video. I can show the preparations of the biryani. I can use video as the medium to attract relevant customers and use Gen AI to create the video in real time. So this is just one example of how the technological advancements that are happening across, not just within the food industry, but across, can be deployed to create a new ad form. Right. The third is observing industry best practices. I won't take the name of that competitor or a adjacent competitor, but we sort of got inspired from someone saying that okay, they have introduced a PIP kind of ad format, picture in picture. Right. There's a pop-up kind of a thing which can be closed. So understanding what the people from the similar industry are doing is the third inspiration or third method to get to a new kind of ad format. The fourth thing is analyzing user behavior and preferences. Customers' preferences and behaviors keep evolving over time, so it's very important to keep a check of what is it that they are doing now. 3 years back, I know my customers had a 60-40 kind of a split between non-search and search. Today, it may very well be reversed. The customers' preferences and ways of scrolling through an app also gets evolved with time, and hence keeping a track of what the customers are doing, where they are engaging, what they are looking at, what they are ordering, how they are ordering, when they are ordering. All of these signals will keep giving you more and more ideas as to where to place the next ad format. Our own example could be realizing that my search page is underutilized. That was done based on looking at this data and realizing that my customers are on search, my ads are not on search. Right?
Sure.
So that was the fourth thing. You asked one more thing around process of experimentation and rollout, right? So I would rather say that this is more or less a standard practice that is deployed on any other platform as well. We start with ideation and conceptualization of what we want to try out. We sort of check the feasibility from a technical standpoint. Third, we look at or testing it out in a smaller geography, do a prototype or a pilot or internal testing. Once we are ready, we sort of do the analysis of that performance in a small period or a pilot, and then we sort of do a phased rollout after it.
Interesting. I think you mentioned again a bunch of insights, Anurodh, and in my interaction with multiple retailers, retail media often walks a very, very tight rope between monetization and user trust. And it seems that Swiggy has actually pioneered in building this trust, because as a consumer, I find the ads on Swiggy extremely native and very, very relevant. And that's also because of the sheer amount of restaurants that are advertising on Swiggy, which is also a testimony of great ad formats that you have built, customers loving the native experiences, and of course, you delivering the best-in-class ROAS/performance metrics that a restaurant wants in order to continue their spends on Swiggy. So extremely well done. But while we approach to the fag end of this particular podcast, I just had like 2-3 more questions on the industry and from the advice that you'd want to give it to the listeners of this podcast. But from an industry standpoint, Anurodh, what are some of the key shifts that you've seen in retail media monetization strategies over the past few years, not just on Swiggy, but if you want to highlight any such trends/strategies that you see outside Swiggy as well?
Again, very interesting and very excellent question, Anuj. I'll have to think a little deeper about this, because when I joined, the kind of discussions that we were surrounded with, not just within Swiggy, but across in various industry conferences that I was able to attend, right? The discussions were around targeting, using data monetization as a lever to engage right set of customers with the right set of restaurants, right? That is what was the key conversation topic, maybe say 2021, 2022, right? Then there was a phase where a lot of emphasis was put on uh, using self-serve as a tool, right? Again, that also evolved with time. And now the focus is on two things, right? Essentially, the restaurant industry is also evolved with Swiggy and the competition, saying that when in 2020, in 2014, the food delivery platforms weren't there. Right? The restaurants were doing a traditional business, and they understood ads as the traditional format of ads. They knew what ads would be, but they imagined them to be a newspaper ad or a pamphlet ad or a BTL, ATL kind of an activity. The retail media introduction sort of happened only after Swiggy introduced its own ads platform.
Right.
Initial days for them were also educatory, so to say. But then now they've evolved, and now they are able to understand the actual gains that any kind of advertising platform can give to its growth or the baseline growth. Let's say a platform or a restaurant on a platform like Swiggy will grow at a pace of X% without ads. Now they understand with ads what is the delta that they're able to achieve. Okay? So this is the evolution that is driving the changes. On the technological front, like I said earlier as well, a lot of introduction of Gen AI capabilities has created a lot of options for platforms like Swiggy to to sort of integrate with them and create an ad format or simplify the existing ad formats.
Right.
Right. So any kind of new ad technology that I see coming in the next few years, I assume, or I have positive confidence that they will be built on technologies like Gen AI.
Got it. Got it. I think Gen AI, largely when you're speaking, I'm sure a lot of head advertisers are already speaking or engaging with some of the best in class creative agencies. But you're right, when it comes to the tail end torso restaurants who may not have the access to creatives, Gen AI as a feature in itself could be very, very powerful for not just from a monetization standpoint, but also in terms of engaging with the right audiences. So I generally see Gen AI on Swiggy someday happening, and a lot of tail end also restaurants as well engaging on the platform. But before we end this today, I just wanted to check on for brands or platforms who are looking to now scale their retail media business, and we have a bunch of retailers who are in the early stages of monetization. Anurodh, in your experience, what are the two, three most critical things for them to get it absolutely right? And number two, for them to not compromise on the customer experience that the retailer has built over the years. Uh, what are some of the key things that you want to highlight here?
Yep, go ahead. Okay, so if I understand this question correctly, you're asking about the platforms that are upcoming and my advice for them for the future. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so see, any platform would start with what we call as the basic platform to introduce ads inventory on their journey. Uh, the fundamentals to keep in mind for anyone is to create an ecosystem which runs on the principle of demand and supply equilibrium. So you keep on moving one along with the other rather than just focusing on one without understanding the nuances of the other. Second thing is striking the right balance between what the advertisers want and what the customers want. If you don't understand either, or if you have a weaker understanding of one of the two, it is bound to not give you the required returns. And hence, understanding what your advertisers are looking for, how do they measure success of running an ad on your platform, is very critical to give what the advertisers want. At the same time, what is the customer's expectation when he's opening your own platform, your app, so that you are able to give both the parties what they are independently looking for. If you are not able to cater to either one, it's bound to fail sooner or later.
Got it. This has been super interesting, Anurodh. I think not just the insights of Swiggy, but some of the suggestions or some of the insights that you provided from an industry overall. I think this has been a truly a fantastic conversation for us, and I must admit that this has been a learning for me as well. Having spent in Swiggy for the last 9 years or so, but having you in this conversation and being in such a structured podcast, this has truly been a learning for all of us. But before you sign off, I must thank you again for joining us and wish you all the best in your current stint and your future endeavors. Thank you very much, Anurodh.
Thank you, Anuj. Thank you again for the kind words, and thanks a lot for having me here. It was a learning for me as well to answer all of these questions that come from that industry's perspective. In fact, while speaking a lot of these things and interacting with you, I also learned a few things the last one. Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Anurodh. Thank you.